3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nittany No Huddle Podcast.
From Philadelphia to Los Angeles
And everywhere in between.
filmed at the Nittany No Huddle studio.
It's Jordo, Zach, and Coach Devin covering all things Penn State football all the time.
This is from 45 and it's blocked. Lions scoop it up. Brad Haley will score.
And here we go.
All right, welcome back, Nittany No Huddle Nation. We've got Zach, Coach Devin here. As you will see, our fearless leader, Jordo, not with us today. He is currently traveling somewhere in the Middle East. Didn't get to watch any of the game today. He's over there on military requirements for the next 6 months, 7 months, something like that. So he's over there, but we're still going to try to do our best. We know he holds everything together. Probably shouldn't have played that intro now that I think about it, because it kind of pissed me off more than it probably should have. So, Zach, I know you really analyzed the game. You sent me a lot of updates. I was covering a football game for the newspaper, so I didn't get to watch it, but I did get to listen to it. So I'll turn it over to you right away with whatever first thing you want to talk about. For our fans, we know this will be a pretty short one, just the two of us, and only one of us actually physically watching the entire game. But we got a lot to cover. Obviously, Penn State loses at home. They blow a fourth quarter lead, and let me add our ticker here at the bottom, and we lose 44-31. So, Zach, initial thoughts?
So I think this is the type of game where in the moment it hurts. It feels like we just blew it. We gave one away. I think in a couple days, or maybe when we do our full recap, there'll be a lot more positives to take away. But there's no mistaking it, as it was a fourth quarter lead at home, that not only did we lose, the game kind of got out of hand at the end, and that it just is it's a painful reminder that football is in sports in general, you have to play till the clock shows 0.0, because there was 9 minutes left. And I think you have you may have the timing down for me here, but yeah, there was something like 9 minutes left, and Penn State had just scored to go up 21-16. And it felt like one more touchdown might do it offensively. If we get one more touchdown, the way the defense was playing, we were forcing a lot of field goals. It was a lot of the bend but don't suck that we've been talking about all season. It felt like it's about to happen, and then it all just came crashing down. And we'll get into some of I think there was some questionable strategy from Penn State, especially defensively late. Some of the fourth down decisions, and whether to kick or not kick, or whether late in the game, whether to take the field goal that we ultimately took and Pinniger made from 44, or whether to chase the touchdown early there. There's a lot, I think, that we'll get into. But there was also a lot of good, and it's really hard as fans, as the crazy lunatics that we are, to just go back to, James Franklin's 2 in a million against the top 10 teams, or blah, 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 blah. And that probably all of that is well and true and good, but it's also important that we sit back, I think, as, reasonable, rational fans that are trying to assess your team, to also acknowledge the things that were done well, and maybe while we're talking Ohio State, to recognize what they are or are not. Because frankly, I was not super impressed with Ohio State today.
Interesting.
Like a couple really dominant players, but yeah, they looked flawed to me. And we'll get into that. But yeah, overall impression is it hurts that you blew a fourth quarter lead at home in some pretty ugly fashion. But 10-2 is still on the table. And I think at the beginning of the year, well, when we did our previews, none of us had 10-2, right? I think all of us sitting there would have said, ugly loss to Michigan. We don't really want that, but I don't think we're going to beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. Close, painful loss at home to Ohio State. Yeah, we want the win, but like that kind of sounds like something that is maybe reasonable, because we have a good history of playing them close. And yeah, so it might end up being, something that isn't too painful to look at the end of the season. But these types of losses stick with you. We always talk about 2017, Ohio State 2017. They just stick with you, and they always will. And I think this is another one you can add to that list of just like what if moments. So
yeah, I'm totally with you. I agree. Obviously, out of the three of us, I've been the one that's probably been the highest on Ohio State based on the eye test and the stat test. But I agree with you. I think that for large portions of the day that Penn State played better than Ohio State. especially defensively. I thought Penn State's defense played really well, and I know you want to get into the run defense a lot. But to hold them to field goals, we've said all year, bend don't suck. And again, you forced one of, if not the most explosive team in the nation right now to several 3 field goal attempts through the 3 quarters. I mean, that's a big accomplishment for a team that is rolling up points on everybody. Obviously, we'll get into the fourth quarter, and that's more for our full recap. But just to hit on what Zach mentioned earlier there, Penn State went up 21-16 on Katron Allen's 1-yard touchdown run after some crazy circumstances. And then Travion Henderson gets a 41-yard touchdown run to put them on top by 3. The next play, Sean Clifford gets strip sacked. Say what you will about Sean Clifford.
And, we'll get to that one, but he didn't even get strip sacked. He got sacked by his own lineman being launched backwards into him, which was just – I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, yeah, you're right.
My Clifford homerism was just like, nah.
Right, because everyone's going to throw that one on Clifford, and it was clearly an offensive line problem. But anyways, the very next play, CJ Stroud connects with Cade Stover on a 24-yard touchdown, and really, like you said there, Zach, as soon as honestly, listening on the radio, whenever they recover that strip sack, it kind of felt like, well, crap, this is not going to go well. And then they score that touchdown on the very next play, and it felt like we had no shot. And I know we came down and we scored another one. We got that field goal from Pinniger, who really bounced back after being terrible throughout, a 44-yarder. But like you said, the run defense, I think, is where we need to probably head next, because other than that 41-yard touchdown run from Travion Henderson, the run defense did a great job. You take away the 41-yard run, and Ohio State had 57 total rush yards on
25 carries.
25 carries. Couldn't do 26 minus 1 in my head. Just kidding. But I'll turn it over to you to talk about the rush defense and what you saw.
Yeah, and you started with the stats, and I think that's a good place to start. But this was the type of game where, unless you're like the biggest Ohio State homer fan in the history of the world, you would come out of this game saying, man, we've got running game problems. We couldn't run the ball against Iowa, and we thought, okay, that's all right. Iowa's got a really sound running game. I don't think anybody came in or Iowa has a really good run defense and run defense overall. I don't think anyone on the Ohio State side came in thinking Penn State's a really good run defense type team. They've got a really good front seven. So we're just going to maybe not be able to run the ball today. And they tried early. They definitely did. And they just kind of went away from it because the passing game was there and they knew they were struggling. But it was really good to see, again, just like the Minnesota game after the Michigan debacle, just to see that type of physical Penn State defensive front that we're accustomed to seeing, that, maybe we give up some plays through the air, maybe we ultimately lose, but we're not just going to get bullied and manhandled. Right. And so for me, that was really nice to see, because it looked like we belonged on the field with Ohio State. One long play, you're not going to go a whole game without giving up one long run play. Probably you're at least one of like 20 yards or so. And the timing was just the worst, right? It just happened at the worst moment. And frankly, they had pretty much given up on the run game. And I forget the down and distance at that moment, but my recollection is they had spread us out in that run play and ran Henderson in almost kind of like a halfback draw type right up the cut
down.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those.
Again, trying to listen on the radio, obviously, they do a great job, the commentators, trying to paint that picture for you. But every once in a while, it's hard to pay attention to what's going on. But I feel like it was third down. Correct us if we're wrong in the comments.
Yeah, and it definitely was either a halfback draw or just sort of a spread them out and run a halfback dive up the gut. It wasn't. My recollection is every time Ohio State lined up in a formation that said we're going to run the ball and tried to run the ball, it went nowhere. And It was actually, I want to dive into the official box score when it comes out, because there was a lot of carries, Ohio State carries, that resulted in negative yards. So it wasn't just Penn State was kind of hanging tough and getting battered, but not getting knocked down to the mat. They were actually, guys were in the backfield making plays, and it was really impressive. And I think it bodes well going forward for the rest of the season. Pass defense is another story, but we'll probably get to that going forward here, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I think our next big talking point, when you lose a game by 13 points and you turn the ball over 4 times and you don't force any turnovers, I think that turnovers is probably our next big talking point. So out of the 4 turnovers, Zach, how many of the 3 interceptions, well, really technically all 4 are on Clifford because of the strip sack. Out of the 4, how many do you think are Sean Clifford's fault? And how many do you think are the interceptions receivers' faults? Just
So I think so. I'll say this: the fumble was in 100 and a million% not his fault. And if you watch that play, you will be and I don't mean to like call guys out for negative play, although everyone's fine doing that with Clifford. Bryce Effner, who was playing right tackle, and actually, I'm not sure what happened to Caden Wallace, if he was removed for not getting the job done or if he was hurt, but Bryce Effner basically got picked up by the Samoan dude, that number 44, and just
whatever his name is,
threw him into Clifford. And you go back and watch the play, I kid you not, Clifford standing there getting ready to throw, and his lineman backside just launches into him, and while he's getting ready to throw, ball pops out. Yeah. So I don't care, Aller, Clifford, Tom Brady. It's like anytime you have a lineman getting beat that bad, and part of it is like we're not looking for offensive linemen at this point that are like dominating play. It's just kind of like have a draw, like have a tie, kind of hold your own, right? And then not to change gears, but the very next possession, Tua Maloa or whatever his name is, same thing. Penn State's running a wide receiver screen to the right. He basically takes Effner and pile drives him into the ground, and then he's standing there. Clifford throws. Maybe Clifford should not have thrown the ball, but the play that was called in the huddle was done the moment that their DN just threw our guy to the ground and then standing right in the path of the throw.
Right.
And you can say Clifford should have just bailed on that play and just run. You can also say, why are we going back to throwing the ball laterally in the direction of a defensive end who is just manhandling our tackle?
Right.
If we're not going to at least put a tight end to chip on him or something, because to get back to your original question, one of the earlier interceptions was Clifford throwing a wide receiver screen laterally down the line to the left, and Penn State's the left tackle actually was bailing to be part of the screen unit, and so we just didn't block the rushing defensive end. So Clifford takes a snap, turns, and the guy's like right there, and he tries to throw it over him. It gets tipped up. One of the other defensive linemen makes a good play. Again, you can always say the quarterback should have made a last-second decision to say and not throw the ball. Right. But it's part line play, it's part scheming. Like why are we, I know there are in a screenplay, you're obviously letting some guys go completely unblocked. Yeah. I don't think it should be the end man on the line of the scrimmage who's between you and the receiver you're trying to throw to. So right. it's kind of like I've been saying all year and through Clifford's whole career is, yes, he has shortcomings and they're well known and they're well documented, but there's an inability to kind of scheme around them and a scheme in a way so that he's not forced to be throwing screens directly at unblocked linemen, right? You watch CJ Stroud
scheming in general. We've covered that a lot on this podcast. We're pretty hardcore fans. I missed the game today. I think that says enough about where I stand as a Penn State fan. Even though I would have much rather watched the Penn State game, but then listen to it. But we're pretty hardcore fan, and we know what Sean Clifford is good at and what he's not good at. And it doesn't feel all the time like Yurcik and Franklin and the coaching staff know what Sean Clifford is good at, and then they put him in these positions that make me want to boo Sean Clifford, when in reality, a lot of times it comes down to a scheme and a planning thing.
Yeah, and I think you have to know the shortcomings of your players and scheme around that. And we did. I don't want to pile on Yurcik too much because the run game was really good. Yeah. Now you look at the stats and it doesn't blow you away. We didn't have a ton of long runs. I think we ran for a total of 111 yards, so we won the rushing battle against Ohio State.
Right.
But if you watch the game, it was one where we weren't getting big pop plays, but especially Katron Allen. And I think this is a game where he kind of really separated himself from Singleton.
I agree.
Singleton was hitting, he'd get a carry, he'd hit the wall, and that's it. Allen had a number of runs, especially the really, really important touchdown run in the fourth quarter where somebody's hands are on him in the backfield, and he's able to wiggle free, put a foot in the ground and make a cut and get yards. He was 12 carries for 76 yards. That's against Ohio State. I'm really happy with that. And Singleton 14 for 45. That's not bad either. And actually, and I hate that college football does this. If you remove Clifford's sack yardage, because he didn't really run for a whole lot today, but he had 7 carries for negative 10 yards. If you take that out of the equation, Allen and Singleton were 26 for 121 yards,
which is solid.
Which I'm really happy with.
Ohio State
Against the number 2 team in the country. I'm really happy with it. And so one of the things that we talked about, and specifically you talked about in the preview, and that we kind of talk about every week because it's so important, is you got to be good on first down. You got to be like just okay on first down. And historically, we've sometimes been bad on first down. And if you go back and watch the game, we ran the ball well on first down. We were getting 4 yards, turning it into 2nd and 6. And I kind of think we maybe could have ran the ball a little bit more, but I'm at least okay with Yurcich in terms of the split between, passing and running. Now, obviously, Clifford's they have him in the book with 47 pass attempts.
Right.
Probably a little bit more. Some of that's at the end, and it's probably a little bit more than we would have liked. But it's this for me. It's the same old Clifford story. He did a lot of good things. I think he made throws today. He made more impressive throws today than I saw from C.J. Stroud.
Interesting. That's a hot take.
And it probably will be, and a lot of fair weather fans and a lot of Clifford haters and a lot of Ohio State homers will laugh at that. But I challenge anyone to go back and watch that game and highlight for me throws that Stroud made that were like, oh man, not a lot of guys are making that throw.
Well, then you have one to Harrison like super late in the game that was the announcers on the radio made it sound like it was pretty much just a pretty absurd pocket pass to Harrison at the end.
Yeah, it was largely Harrison though. I mean, Joey Porter, it was a good throw. I'll give him that one. Yeah, that was one that he put it on the money and it was low. Harrison was on a slant with Joey Porter, like frankly hanging all over him. And it was an impressive pitch and catch. But for the most part, and maybe this is a good segue while we mentioned Harrison and Stroud. Yeah, for the most part, the defense did a lot of good things, and we were pretty good on third down. One of the things we talked about in the preview was we got to get off the field. They were 4 of 12 on third down, and I think they were like,
I think you texted me 1 of 7 in the first
1 of 7. So it really in the second half they started. Yeah, in the second half they started to convert. The first half they just couldn't, and the defense, the first half Penn State defense was quintessential bend but don't suck, classic, solid red zone defense. We held them to 13 points. We were in great shape. But there was in the second half, actually really all game, there was so many moments where, especially on third downs or big plays that Ohio State converted, where we just went into this like 7 guys standing up at the line of scrimmage with our blitz package. And then we played man, but we were giving these like 12-yard soft cushions. And Harrison was just running slants all day, basically like uncovered. And, they did have some plays where they beat us down the field a little bit, but it wasn't like we were getting diced up through the air on long shots downfield. And I just wanted to see more of make them earn it. And there was the game was really lost. So Ohio State went up 30-21 with the Henderson score. Or was I forget who scored, but Ohio State was up
first, then the pass after the strip.
The pass, the Stover. Yep. So Penn State started, and the offense moved the ball, and Penn State elected. I think they ran the ball on third down, and then we kicked a field goal.
A delay to Singleton, I think.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of switching gears here again, but I at that moment when it was 30-21 with like 5 minutes to go, I understand what Franklin was doing there. Right. But I think the only way you kick that field goal there is if you think that Ohio State will not move off of 30 points.
Right. I'm with you.
It's 30-24. It's 30-21, and they're getting the ball back. Probably going to have at least 2 possessions left. Kicking the field goal there says, I trust that my defense will not let them score, period. Yeah. I'll get the ball back, score a touchdown, and win. I just think in that moment, it was too much of an ask to basically say to your defense, they can't score again. If you drive down, if we finish that drive with a touchdown, it becomes 30-28. And then the next Ohio State possession, you at least give your defense a chance of force a field goal and we're fine.
Yeah.
The problem with after the field goal was once Ohio State got in the red zone and they have a very good kicker at 30-24, the field goal ends the game. And it was just backbreaking. And part of that is what, like we talked about in the preview as well, is you can't get down by more than a touchdown to Ohio State.
Right.
Especially late. We were down 10-0. early. I think I believe it was 10-0. But
Yes.
in the second half, you
Yeah,
can't
10-0 at the end of the first.
You pretty much have to stay within a touchdown of Ohio State because you just can't chase them. So I'm not gonna throw Franklin under the bus too much on that one because there is a reasonable explanation for why he kicked the field goal there. Mathematically, we needed to score twice anyway. We needed a touchdown and a field goal. So you could say, well, what does it matter what the order is? The only reason why I say the order matters is because your defense is clearly starting to show cracks at that point. But and I will say, while I'm talking about that field goal, props to Jake Pinniger because he looked broken earlier in the game.
Yep, you even texted that.
Prior to the Katron Allen touchdown, and what a sequence of events that was. I know you were probably only on the radio portion of the game at that point, but
yeah.
Penn State, 4th and 1, Franklin elects maybe at like the 15-yard line. It was a short field goal. I think we ran the ball on third. Oh no, we threw a halfback wheel route to Allen, like out of bounds. He was like double covered on 3rd and 1. Franklin sends the field goal unit out. Pinniger misses, but we had a false start. So now it's 4th and 6. Field goal is 5 yards longer. I forget what Ohio State. I think they hit the center or something. I think it's illegal to line up over the center and hit the center on the snap after the snap, and so then it becomes 4th and 1 again. Well, Pinniger missed both of those plays had flags, but Pinniger missed the kick on both. And at that point, Franklin was like, "We're not kicking a field goal here."
Right. I mean,
they go for it in 4th and 1, and actually, it was a really good moment. I'll give Yurcich credit. So we had lined up in our power tee that we have been using a lot lately and had used successfully in the Ohio State game.
Yeah, which you would assume it's going to be a Clifford sneak because that's what we've done. Or 90% of the time we've ran that formation.
Right. Or the sweep route where we have the two running backs serving as lead blockers. Well, they motioned everybody out and 4 guys went to one side and Tyler Warren went to the other side and they threw a nice slant route to him. So that was a nice moment where it showed me set something up with a formation, feed their mind like this is what you when you see this is what we're going to do, and then we go to something different. I'll give them credit for that. But after that, at that point, I basically said, like, I don't think you can run Pinniger back out there. He's like broken. He missed two short field goals and got away with it. So credit to him when Franklin sends him back out for a 44-yard field goal, and he kicked it. It was a great kick, and it was a no doubter. So that was nice to see because the last thing you want going into the home stretch too is that your kicker is mentally broken. But but getting back to the big picture discussion of sort of strategy in the fourth quarter, I just feel like Manny Diaz really let me down in the fourth quarter. The defense had performed really well, and we just became very predictable, and it became very obvious what we were doing, especially on our blitzing downs. And we gave way too much respect to their receivers. Again, Harrison chewed us up, but it wasn't like Harrison and Egbukpa actually didn't really have whatever his name is, didn't really have that good of a game. There weren't guys running 53 yards. There weren't guys running down the field just torching our secondary downfield. They made a couple nice plays early. There was a nice play where Kalen King got beat, but we just were giving them easy pitch and catches, and that's too easy for CJ Stroud. You got to at least make them earn it. I'd rather go down swinging, playing aggressive man coverage than just seeing them convert slants where they're basically uncovered and they catch the ball and then fall forward. Right. He has let me down a little bit.
Yeah. So one other thing here, talking about easy pitch and catch, I'm really interested to hear your opinions. And obviously we need to go back and analyze it. And we do all that in our full breakdown. Initial thoughts on Parker Washington as the chief fan club of We Don't Have Scary Wide Receivers. How you feeling about his performance, how he did? I don't know if anyone's still scared of him, but turned in a really good performance for sure.
Yeah, and it wasn't the type of performance that necessarily scared anybody,
right?
But he caught everything that was thrown his way. I wish I had the targets.
Yeah,
it just felt like he caught everything that was thrown his way, and he did actually make. There was one play, I believe it was in the first half, where he made an extraordinary. It was actually a great pitch and catch, and Clifford will never get credit for it, but Parker Washington was running an out route, and somebody broke through on the Ohio State defensive front, and Clifford kind of shuffled his feet and backed up and bought himself just enough time and threw a not very pretty looking pass, but Washington wasn't out of his break yet, so he knew and he was about to get sacked, so he knew he needed to get the ball out of his hand, and so he floated it a little bit away to the sideline, and Parker basically was like full Superman dive
Right.
Perfect catch. Kept it from hitting the ground. It was really an amazing catch. But just, yeah, I mean, he was the target all game. He was the guy who was getting the ball. The first touchdown of the game, he ran a slant. Clifford hit him. The corner and the safety both converged to tackle him, and he basically broke 2 tackles at once and was down the sideline for a touchdown. Just a really, really good game. And I think it was nice to see, because we've been kind of waiting for somebody to step up. At moments it looked like Washington. At other moments we've kind of thought it's been Mitchell Tinsley. Then, the Minnesota game and Theo Johnson emerges. So it was nice to see Parker Washington on this big stage against, 5-star defensive back say, hey, I'm the guy. Like 11 catches, 179 yards and a touchdown. I'm the number one guy. So that was good to see.
Yeah, for sure. So do you have any other thoughts or comments, or we keep this right here under 30 minutes or so?
Yeah, no, we'll certainly have more to discuss.
Yeah.
And we'll get Jordo's take. But I think this is one that hurts only insofar as it was unexpected that we were actually like in the lead in the fourth quarter.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I think if you just look at the box score and didn't watch the game, you'd be like, hey, it looks like we kind of blew it in the fourth quarter, but Stroud.
But again, and like you said, like how close are people going to look at that? I mean, if this wasn't Penn State, Ohio State, and someone just sent you this box score and said, what do you think about this game? Give me a thought. I mean, Penn State was in the game.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
none of us really thought that. So
the airheads and loud noises that you see on ESPN and other places are going to probably use this to simultaneously prop up Ohio State and laugh at
Michigan.
Penn State. When I think in reality it probably should be used as a sign that Ohio State is not who they think Ohio State is, and that Penn State is basically who we think they are.
Right,
A team that's pretty good. And it's pretty close.
It's the third best team in the Big Ten,
and they're still
Penn State's the third best team in the Big Ten. Yeah.
So I think it's not going to be the final score will allow the idiots at the various ESPN and other places to come to conclusions that I don't think would be justified if you actually watch the game. But
yeah,
we can't control that. So
right. So I'm with you. So any other thoughts?
No, I think the big thing going forward, and some of our guys in the group chat have already mentioned this, but it'll be interesting to see the Clifford Aller discussion. And Franklin's been very, very clear that Clifford's a starter, and we're not switching quarterbacks. But now that the Big Ten title is clearly off the table and the playoffs are clearly off the table, but a good season and a good bowl game is still on the table. It'll be interesting to see if that transition from Clifford to Aller starts to happen now, because you look at the back end of the schedule, and if you were of the mind to say we want to give the keys to Aller, you couldn't really script it better at this point.
Yeah,
he got plenty of action in the early going. He didn't have to face the gauntlet of Michigan or Ohio State, and then you have Maryland, Indiana, Rutgers, Michigan State, and you sort of ease him into the driver's seat with that schedule. I think that's a reasonable path if that's the path Franklin wants to go. I just don't think
he's not going to.
I just don't think he's going to go that route.
He's not going to. No.
And I've been pretty clear. I'm a Clifford guy. I think Clifford is made to be a scapegoat for a lot of our problems. I would be okay if that was the stated intent of Franklin at this point. We're to say, look, we're going to start that transition. Maybe we're going to play 2 quarterbacks. Maybe I don't know. I think at this point it's justified. I think, again, my take is until you get that second loss in conference, everything's still on the table. So I don't like the idea of just saying we're gonna make a massive change just for the sake of making a massive change. I think now we're at a point now where it's a bit more justifiable.
Yeah, I'm with you. Obviously, I want Drew Aller to start just because, like you said, I think things are, other than going to a good bowl game, things are off the table. So I'm ready for building for next year. And I think that's one of the hardest things as a coach is where's that balance between the future and the present. And I definitely don't envy Franklin for having that decision. I would be shocked if Drew Aller plays next week, other than if we somehow play really well and blow out Maryland, right? Maryland next week.
Actually, we may have Indiana. I may have misstated the order, but
yeah, it's irrelevant. But either way, Drew Aller's not going to play unless Clifford gets hurt. So it is what it is. I think the biggest thing, my last big takeaway you hit on the running backs earlier. I think I'm ready for them for next year because I think that if we can get a little bit of offensive line play, we have 2 stud running backs. And even though Katron Allen has probably moved a little bit ahead of Nick Singleton in my book, and probably in the coaching book as well, we got 2 studs that we got 2 more years with them because I would be surprised if either of them stick around for a senior campaign at the rate they're going, and we've got to utilize them. So, yeah, I think that kind of wraps up our Penn State stuff. Only other thing I want to say is I got to shout out the UConn Huskies because they were my super dog. I've won 4 super dogs in a row. UConn has won 4 games this year after winning 3 in the last 3 years combined. So my basketball school up there in the north, always been a big UConn Husky fan. Ben Gordon, Emeka Okafor, Rip Hamilton, love those guys. Had to throw it in there. So, yeah, I think that's
mine. Unfortunately, did not come through, but it was a good game. West Virginia.
Yes, they almost covered it, right? Because it wasn't.
Yeah.
Didn't it go to like 8 or something, and then they lost by 10?
I think the line was like 7 or 8, and they hung tough, and they just didn't have the horses defensively.
Yeah,
but
which
a lot of good games going on.
Good.
A lot of good games going on right now. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up my Illinois Fighting Illini, and they're in a dogfight with Nebraska. And don't look now, but if Nebraska wins that game, they have as good a shot as anybody to win the West, which is
just absurd.
Insane, but
it's absurd.
We'll leave it with that. We won't go any further than that.
I think that's a good one to leave it on. So appreciate everybody who's tuned in and listening. In the comments, add "We Miss Jordo" to let us know that you appreciate our service. Thank you for your service, Jordan Farson. So I think that'll wrap it up. Nittany Huddle Nation. See you next time.
Thanks for watching the Nittany No Huddle podcast.
Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Podcasts are posted weekly on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new shows.